year is 800 BC, when a tribe of skilled craftsmen, metalworkers, and seafarers settled on a large peninsula in Central Europe. This was the tribe known as the Etruscans. They provided trade business with Greece and Rome, until one day being fully assimilated into Roman society. For years, their culture expanded and evolved. Their clothing turned into overalls, they grew soft, bushy mustaches, and they didn't even need to say a word to each other unless it was absolutely necessary. Their vocabulary became a series of yahas and woohoos, and when things went really well, they'd chant Mamma Mia. These are the origins of Italy. I've got a weird heritage. I've been making videos for a while now, since I was 14 in fact. 8 years of me making dumb videos about games that I love. Some about games I love a little too much. And when looking through my catalog, I realized something. I have a shockingly low number of Mario reviews. In fact, not counting my mini review of Mario Kart Wii, I've only looked at Mario Odyssey and 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Those are his most recent games in the lineup, and one of them was a re-release of a Wii U game. I don't always like to restrict myself looking at games that are part of a bigger franchise. I do want to look at games that I'm genuinely interested in. Which is interesting because one day, I just had a bug to go and fully play the original Super Mario Bros. Games again. It's funny because I feel like Mario is sort of on the same level as, say, Mickey Mouse. Like, it's hard to introduce someone new to this series because it feels like everybody knows who Mario is. But then I realized that there aren't too many people who talk about Mario's origins, and while this is certainly a well-documented subject, most of the videos that talk about that often look and sound like, "Hello interwebs, and I'm here to talk to you about the original Super Mario Brothers." Not so fast, Sean. Oh my god, it's my evil twin brother, John. I am here to tell you that your opinion is wrong. Oh. Shit. Mario got his start in the arcades as the protagonist of the 1981 Donkey Kong. It's a very basic arcade game by today's standards, but it's shockingly expressive for the time. Mario wasn't actually called Mario in this game, surprisingly, for he was named Jumpman. Well, I know why he's called that. He's Italian.
Like me. I did it.
He wouldn't officially get the name until the game came out west when the American branch of Nintendo named him Mario. Less so because he was Italian, and more so because it was a nod to Nintendo of America's landlord, Mario Segale. It probably helped that the man was Italian-American, but I like to think he could have been Irish and named Seamus, and they still would have named him that. The Super Seamus Brothers, Ireland's best. Mario would appear again in the 1983 arcade game Mario Brothers, where they introduced his twin brother, Luigi. Again, this game is pretty standard as well, but for the time, I can imagine it was a lot of fun in the arcades. I would have loved to see someone's reaction to seeing both this and Donkey Kong and discovering it's the same person in both. I can imagine that would have been pretty wild. That's impossible! 1983. Now, why does that year sound familiar? Oh, that'll do it. The market for video games at home nosedived during this time, and when you look at what was being released, it's pretty easy to see why. Tons of poor quality games that were being very falsely advertised, way oversaturating the market alongside copyright laws that actually didn't exist now that I say it out loud. When you see how strict and stingy game companies are when it comes to their products today, this crash is the reason why. The medium was almost killed because of it. Arcades were still doing fine, since I'm pretty sure if you were designing a game that was meant to be played on something the size of me, I think there was probably a bit of pressure to make the damn game good. Up till then, Nintendo had been sticking to the arcade, but they had made a couple of Japanese exclusive Pong consoles which you could play at home. I don't think the crash necessarily hurt them, at least not as much as the other gaming companies like Atari and Coleco, but they were still looking for their big breakout product. Donkey Kong was the start, Mario Bros helped continue it, and finally Nintendo threw their hat in the ring with their own console, that being the Famicom. This is the Japanese version of the NES which we got in the United States, keeping in the Japanese tradition of looking and feeling much better than the American version. Seriously, I love the way this thing looks and it feels so high quality. Although I will argue it's not really as comfortable to play as the NES. The wires on the controllers are so short and they're hardwired into the system, so if your controller breaks or malfunctions, then you gotta get the whole system replaced. I mean, considering the size of the common Japanese apartment, I guess this probably does a fine enough job, but I'll take the NES with its longer and detachable controller wire. But the first game to be released day and date with both the Famicom and the NES was Super Mario Brothers. I do wonder why they decided the way they differentiate this game from the original Mario Brothers arcade game would just be to add Super to the title. I mean, I guess you could use it to show something's new and improved.
Oh my god, it's Super Sean! I got a new shirt.
Ever since its release, Super Mario Bros. Has reigned supreme as one of the most popular games of all time, as of now selling 48 million copies, 40 of those from its original launch on the NES and Famicom. People went nuts for this game, and many still do, touting it as one of the greatest games to ever be released. Who's gonna tell him? Look, you have to understand that all the praise this game has gotten since its released almost 40 years ago is absolutely warranted when you understand the context. At the time, there wasn't a game like this ever released. There was this cool fantasy world to explore, and the challenge was absolutely fair. It wasn't trying to nickel and dime you like the arcades, or scam you out of your money like many Atari games were doing. It was a perfectly promoted product that showed the consumers what it was and delivered it tenfold. And in saying that out loud, I should probably put this little guy somewhere he won't hurt himself. Yeah, there we go. I feel that aspect of delivering what was promised is a strength that could be applied across the entire series. You'd be hard-pressed to find a mainline Mario game that didn't deliver on what it promised to the player. Spin-offs are a bit of a different story, but at its core, this set the foundation for the rest of the Mario series, being high quality and consistent. And when you look at it under those guides, I think that's why this game got as much praise as it did back in 1985. Now, when you look at the game without that context and judge it on its own merits, yep, it's certainly the first Super Mario game. It is kind of weird playing this game after experiencing almost every other mainline game in the series, and there's definitely an argument to be made that there's not much of a reason to go back and play this one. I don't entirely agree with that, but I understand where the perception comes from. This game is very simple, but it's very effective. The game takes place in this mystical land called the Mushroom Kingdom, where blocks float in the air, loose coins inflate the economy, and the goddamn turtles run amok. The leader of this kingdom is one Princess Toadstool. Yeah, that's what she was called in America for a couple of years until her Japanese name, Peach, became the standard. To defend her kingdom from the tyranny of the evil Koopa Kingdom, she surrenders herself to King Koopa. Again, that was his name in America until he was officially renamed into Bowser. I have no idea why only their names were changed. I guess maybe some notes didn't get transferred, or maybe they wanted the names to be more synonymous with their roles. The King of the Koopas is called King Koopa. The Princess of the Toads is called Toadstool. Good thing Mario is as Italian a name as you can get, because I don't think you can get a more literal sounding Italian man unless you named him Leonardo Luciano. Speaking of Mario, he is tasked with saving the princess from Bowser and to restore peace to the Mushroom Kingdom. Now, Mario's origins in the Mushroom Kingdom has always been a weirdly debated one. Originally, his backstory was after his tussle with Donkey Kong, Mario and Luigi were working jobs as plumbers in Brooklyn, when suddenly they came across one of the green pipes you find in the game and get transported to the Mushroom Kingdom that way. Two things. One, the fact that Mario and Luigi ran a family-owned business in New York involving them to wear a tool belt and fix other people's belongings is probably the most Italian thing I've ever heard in my life. Sure, it's a bit stereotypical, but it's not inaccurate. Have you met us Italians? We're loud, we're greasy, and we always know a guy.
He can reach the top shelf. You're taller than me!
And second, this origin would soon be changed to be that Mario and Luigi were just born as residents of the Mushroom Kingdom. Weird how they're still Italian in a world that has no Italy, but honestly, I like this more. It makes things less complicated. That is, until a new goddamn Mario movie is showing that this is possibly going to be their origin again, which, considering the cast and what his voice actually sounds like, really makes me wish they just had him and Luigi born in that world from the get-go.
Mushroom Kingdom, here we come!
I got way off track there. Regardless, you travel across 8 different worlds in an attempt to save Peach. At the end of the castle levels in each world, we meet a Toad who was taken as a decoy to throw Mario off, telling that our princess was in another castle. Now, I know that this has often been cited as really lame and that the Toads have kind of become the proverbial punching bag of the series because of this. Personally, I like to think it goes back to Mario being Italian. The thing we're looking for most is always in the last possible drawer.
Oh, there's my gun.
As for the game itself, well, there it is. Yeah, this is a very what you see is what you get kind of game. You run right, you jump through obstacle course like levels until you get to the flagpole at the end. There are 8 worlds with 4 levels, each ending with a castle stage that ends with a boss fight. You do this for 32 levels and you win. And if you think I'm grossly understating the content in this game, you might be right, but honestly, this is probably one of the simplest games that someone could play nowadays. Every level follows a strict flat line for you to run across. You have the occasional pits and platforms you can jump across, but in my opinion, the level design is honestly not the hardest aspect of this game, since I can't really remember anything that unique from them. The most you'll find if you explore are a select few bonus rooms that have a bunch of coins. Either they're way up in the sky or deep underground, and they're nothing spectacular. It doesn't help that coins aren't super useful outside of getting a high score and collecting an extra life when you get 100. You can occasionally find extra power-ups hidden in the levels via certain blocks, and those who are used to the onslaught of power-ups you get in later Mario games, sorry to say you only get 3 here. Technically 4 if you count the green mushroom, but that gives you a 1-up. You have the red mushroom, which makes you grow big and gives you an extra hit point. You take a hit, you become Small Mario. You can find fire flowers that also allow you to take an extra hit and can give you the ability to shoot fireballs, thus making it the better option by default. This thing can kill almost every enemy in the game, including boss fights. When you get it, you better hold on to it, since unlike later games in the series, if you take a hit as Fire Mario, you shrink back down to your small form. This can be a bit of a pain to deal with, considering that the game has kind of a scaling system for your power-ups. You can't spawn a fire flower until you first grab a mushroom. If you somehow manage to grab a fire flower when you're small, you only grow into Big Mario. That aspect is thankfully fixed in later games, and the scaling is something that remains constant across the series. However, this doesn't apply to the last power-up you can find, the Invincibility Star. You grab it, and you run through Bowser's lackeys like it's nothing. It's a lot of fun to use, but because it's so overpowered, it's easily the rarest power-up you can find in the game. You're likely to find it 2, maybe 3 times at most if you're lucky. You got yourself some Goombas who only ever walk in a straight line, and then proceed to pray to themselves whenever they see the bottom of Mario's shoes. Yeah, jumping off of it gets the job done on most of these guys, except for Bowser. The only time the Goombas are ever annoying is when you end up missing them by like a few pixels, or sometimes they'll just turn around when they run into the remains of their close friends. Hey man, I can relate.
Nope, not doing that.
Koopas can be a lot of fun. When you jump on them, they can turn into a shell that you can kick. Anything in its path is basically dead on contact. The green Koopas are pretty dumb. If they approach a cliff, they go. The red ones are a little smarter. They see a cliff, they retain the will to live, and turn around. The same kind of applies to the buzzy beetles you run into later in the game. They're basically just less interesting Koopas. In the castles, you have these fireballs called Potobos.
Nice.
You got yourself piranha plants that come out of the pipes, Lakitus who throw spikies down on you, which are one of the few things you can't jump on. You got Cheep Cheeps who are, well, fish. And you got Bloopers who are, well, squids. Yeah, there's a bit of a weird animal theme with these enemies. You got turtles, fish, squids, beetles. You do have the fireballs, but what the hell is the Goomba supposed to be? Oh. The worst of the bunch has to be the Hammer Brothers. I don't know if it's just faulty programming or what, but these are the hardest enemies in the game, dead serious. Their pattern for throwing hammers is basically random. Trying to run under them when they jump is difficult to time. Jumping on them is basically an impossibility because there's a very high likelihood that you will land on the hammer that you hold right above their head right as they're about to throw it. Not even the bosses are this annoying. Bowser isn't the easiest boss ever, especially in the later worlds where he shoots fire and throws hammers at you, but the most you have to do is just to get past him and hit the axe. Neat detail, if you kill the early world versions of Bowser with the fire flower, you reveal that it's actually an enemy in disguise. That's pretty neat. You don't really need the fire flower to beat Bowser, it just makes it easier. If you time yourself right, you can just jump right past him with no problem. It helps especially that you have enough control over Mario to do that. That is one thing I feel surprises everyone when they play this game. The controls are good. With the game being as simple as it is, there isn't too much to discuss here. I mean, just look at the NES controller. Every button you need to play the game is right here. Running and jumping feels pretty smooth, and when you get a rhythm going, you can blast through levels like it's no problem. You actually have some momentum and control to your jumps, which is insane considering when this game came out. No other platformer before this gave you movement this responsive. Hell, even some games that came out after didn't do that. Steering your jumps doesn't feel as graceful as I would like it to be, but you can correct most of your mistimed jumps with very little problem. The only thing I still don't know how to feel about is the inclusion of a run button. You hold down B and you accelerate faster until you reach top speed. I get why it was included back when this game came out. I doubt there were many games that came out whose screen scrolled this quickly, so they gave you an option to ease players in. However, I'm the type of player who firmly believes you should never take your thumb off the run button while playing this game. Playing without running is an honest-to-God slog. I don't understand why anyone would prefer playing the game this way. I also feel like it gives me more control over my jumps. If you try to jump from a standstill, it feels like you're pushing a car with your bare hands. I would say you should just back up and get more of a running start, but in a move that I still to this day do not understand, the screen locks when you move forward. If you try to go left at any point, the screen will not go with you. Now this, I really can't explain. Maybe it was a programming snafu, or perhaps it just saved on system memory. I don't know, but I will say it is easily my least favorite part of replaying this game. If there's a power-up you missed because you took a pipe that sent you forward, you can't go back and get it. That's honestly the only thing anything that feels particularly dated when it comes to how the game plays. Although, and this may be a little controversial, I do feel the game's presentation as a whole is what has aged the harshest. Again, this game came out in 1984 and was the first to be properly developed for the system. The capabilities of the hardware were still yet to be discovered, so I do feel the graphics hold up in that sense. It is very simple. You're not going to find anything remotely complex in this game on a technical level. The sprites are very simple and blocky. The animations often consist of 2 frames. Has anyone ever noticed how goofy Mario's swim cycle is? It looks like he's playing Hotfoot. The early designs of the character, man, they had it a little rough. Mario wearing a brown shirt and red overalls just looks wrong to me. Peach in a white dress is kind of surreal in hindsight, given that this basically becomes her Fire Flower outfit. Bowser, I mean, sweet Jesus, I think he got it the worst. His horns look like he's wearing a birthday party hat, and why is he so short? Big Mario is taller than him. Actually, Bowser is hunched over and a bit sickly green. Oh my god, we're beating up a senior citizen. He's wearing the hat. It's probably his 90th birthday. And also his last one. The music in this game, I mean, do I even need to mention it? It has become just as iconic as Mario himself. The main overworld theme is a good time, though you are going to be hearing it a lot as it is the most played track in the game by far. The underground theme is one that I don't have many thoughts on in regard to this rendition, but the remixes it gets in later games, and especially Smash Bros., is where I think the theme really shines. I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I think my favorite track may be the underwater theme. It has a nice energy to it that feels relaxed, but also upbeat and fun. It helps that we don't hear it too often in the game, so it stays fresh whenever it comes up. The castle level theme, is it fair to say it's not even a track? I don't know what the melody is supposed to be here. It's so erratic. I like to think that the game's composer, Koji Kondo, when asked about this track said, "Oh no, don't worry, it sounds like this." I feel his future works are stronger personally, but for his first outing, this was damn good. Kondo had came into development right out of college to compose the game's soundtrack. The design of the game primarily came from Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. Shigeru Miyamoto, I mean, this man created most people's childhoods. He was an artist for Nintendo before being promoted to director with Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., and he's labeled as the main director for this game as well. To go into this man's history would be an entire video in and of itself, but if you want a quick and easy watch about him, I highly recommend Treecicle's video, The Historic Rise of Shigeru Miyamoto. It's a fascinating history lesson on one of the godfathers of game design. Takashi Tezuka is one that I think more people would recognize from his contributions to the Zelda series, as he was basically the man calling all the shots from most of the early games. Writing, directing, designing, producing. Again, this is a topic for another video, but his contributions to this game are basically on par with Miyamoto's. Their influence that we've become more familiar with in their future works is all over this game. When you break it down, it's a very imaginative world they were able to create, and this wasn't seen in any other games before this. I feel that really needs to be understood, as most games on home consoles were either just some form of Pong or Space Invaders. This was one of the first commercially successful games to create what seemed like a large world that you could explore and discover in. I can only imagine playing this game when it came out in 1985 and discovering all the cool secrets, some of the secret areas where you can get coins, or the fact that in World 1-2 you can go on the ceiling and interact with the scoreboard, and the fact that you can go past the exit to find a warp point. A select few levels have these that send you forward without having to play through the whole game again. This is both cool and also a bit of a necessity, since Super Mario Bros. Doesn't have a save system. So if you get a game over or turn off the system, you're back to the beginning of the game. There is a code you can use to get back to the world you left off on, but it's not super reliable since it's very easy to accidentally start the game over again. In all fairness, nowadays, this shouldn't really be an issue, since when you know what you're doing, you could beat Super Mario Bros. In an hour. There is also a second playthrough you could do after rescuing Peach at the end, but from what I could tell, it's the same game. The only difference is that the Goombas are replaced with Buzzy Beetles, so there's not much replay value if you want some more challenge. However, if you want a little extra difficulty, you could always play the lost levels. Okay, a little context. So Super Mario Bros. Was a big hit, obviously. If it wasn't, why are we still here? It did so well that Nintendo ordered a sequel be made immediately and have it be released on the Japanese-only Famicom disk system. It was an add-on for the Famicom that played games off a floppy disk. Well, I wonder if that caught on. The same team who made the original Super Mario Bros. Returned to make this one, with the only exception, I'm guessing, being Koji Kondo, as all the music is the same from the first game. In fact, you may notice that this Mario 2 looks shockingly similar to the first game. Yeah, it's basically an extension of the first Mario game with new gimmicks, harder levels, and some tweaked graphics. I say tweaked graphics because, to tell you the truth, it's a lot of small things that you probably won't notice until you look at them side by side. The ground is made up of new sprites, and the blocks have more defined shading. The clouds have a smiley face, that's kinda cute. The hills and trees have eyes, that's not very cute. Oh look, the mushroom's different.
I can't look this game in the eye.
It's okay.
I can't. Oh my god. Ah, it hurt me so much.
Oh my god, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, allow me to break the proverbial ice. People fucking hate this game. If you were to break it down, The Lost Levels is basically a glorified ROM hack of the first game where everything is made as difficult and annoying as possible. The story is... The script repeats itself. Yeah, the plot is exactly the same as last time. It's just an excuse to go on another adventure. And mechanically, that adventure is, once again, the exact same as last time. You have 8 new worlds with 4 levels apiece. Beat one, move on to the next until you win. The enemies have remained mostly the same with only a couple tweaks. There are now red piranha plants that move out much faster, and the Hammer Brothers follow you until the end of the screen. I'm not using it, I just like the sound. It's like they knew these guys were the worst and were just trolling us. But okay, I think I know what a lot of people are wondering. Who killed Kennedy? If this game is so similar to the first in almost every way, what makes it so much worse? It jaywalks! The level design is garbage. Every stage is designed with the utmost intention of killing you and getting you a game over. Several bottomless pits, enemies that just blindside you from off screen, a reskin of the mushroom now called the poison mushroom that hurts my soul. The enemy placement is relentless in this game. You know how I said the challenge of the first game was where the enemies were placed and not so much the level design itself? Yeah, now it's both. There are several long jumps you need to make to have an enemy at the beginning and end of the pit. So many of these cramped areas you can't easily get out of, then are swarming with baddies, and they starve you for power-ups so much in this game. I spend most of my time as Small Mario since I was getting hit constantly. Getting a Fire Flower is a luxury in this game compared to previously. And make sure to have fun with the whole 2-star menu you'll be able to find at most. Certain levels now introduce wind blowing across the screen, and it's often to give you a push to get to new platforms. Whenever you see those goddamn leaves on the screen, then panic. This means that you are in a level that requires you to jump across a pit and hope for the best. And in some levels, you're not even on the screen since you jump on the new super trampoline that basically... This makes the fact that you can't scroll the screen back even worse, because you need a running start in order to make these jumps. Then you have this part where... I guess you just stay here and pray? What the hell happened here? The castle levels, oh my god, the castle levels. What was even the thought process with these? Most of these levels go on forever. Not only having the same trappings as other levels, now you have a tight ceiling to deal with and massive amounts of fire to avoid. In the last game, there was a gimmick in World 7-4 where you had to navigate through the castle in a certain order to proceed. If you didn't, then the stage would loop forever until you figured it out. And I'll be honest, it was kind of a neat challenge to introduce at that point in the game, as you had to do something different and think outside the box in order to proceed. With some patience, the paths were pretty clear. So I'm guessing that everyone who made this game thought that was too easy because the labyrinth castles and lost levels are some of the worst. The path you have to follow on some of these stages is so specific and confusing that it honestly feels like the game glitches out when you keep doing the same thing with nothing happening. I would say take your time trying to figure it out, but you can't even do that since you have a time limit. This was present in the first game as well, and it didn't really add any challenge there. The times were always more than generous to you. Should I ask what happens next? What do you think happens? The time limit is always near 0 when going through the castle stages, and considering the final one is basically one giant maze with long hallways that eat up so much time, you are definitely going to die because of the timer. Do yourself a favor and do the infinite lives trick in the first level. This was something you could also do in the last game as well, but it was limited to certain levels and could be a bit tricky to pull off. I'm convinced the devs put this block configuration here just so you could do the infinite lives trick. It really doesn't serve any other purpose on the level. They put a red Koopa here so it couldn't escape the woes of education. But be careful if you get too many lives doing this. You can actually reset the counter to the negatives, causing an immediate game over if you die. It's stuff like that and all the other bullshit in this game that transcends frustration into honest-to-God hilarity. I was shockingly not that perturbed while playing this game. When a random bit of annoying design or aggravating enemy placement got the better of me, I just laughed. When I was trying to land in a section only to fall through as if I couldn't fit even though I could, I was slapping my knee in a fit of laughter, maybe a bit too much. Even when you find a warp zone, it doesn't send you forward at all. It actually sends you back a few worlds. I'm convinced that this game was made more as a joke just to troll new players, and I think it's funny. It is objectively terrible design, but I like to imagine other people getting rageful at these moments, and it just makes me laugh. Although, full transparency here. Yeah, I kinda suck. I've been playing these through the NSO apps on the Switch, which allow me to do shit like this. Yeah, I know, this is technically cheating, and if I was playing a more authentic version of the game, I'd probably be singing a different tune. But I don't feel that bad if I'm being real. I'm not in the mood to play this game as designed if it means I'm gonna be in a bad headspace afterwards. I'd rather spend my time elsewhere. So you bet I abused the hell out of the rewind and save state just to get the footage that I needed. If I replaced that with all my deaths, there's only so many times I could say, damn, I died again. I wanted to see what was in store for me and what the game had to offer. And in all seriousness, I actually kinda dig the final world you discover after beating the final boss. It's 4 new levels you have to beat in one life in order to see everything, and it's a mess. What's with the pink pipes? Why are you swimming in the clouds? Why is there a flagpole after Bowser? I really think this was just a test level that they reworked into the final game somehow. That or they were doing some kind of acid putting this together. But I do like that the final level has you swimming through a series of blocks that spells out thank you in Japanese. And you know what? That's pretty cool. It honestly feels like a genuine thank you message at the end of what's an otherwise completely frustrating experience. In fact, it was so frustrating that it never left Japan in the first place. There have been conflicting reports as to why it never left. Some say it was because it was too difficult, and I don't really buy that. Zelda 1 came out the same year in Japan, and I'd argue that's pretty close in terms of difficulty. I honestly feel there was a concern that it was way too similar to the first Mario game to be marketable. I mean, what would the commercials say about this? Look, it's the same game, but worse.
Whoa, no way.
It wouldn't be until 2007 when this version would be released for international audiences on the Wii's Virtual Console. You could probably emulate it beforehand, but officially there wasn't much to pull from. There is one exception though, and that's in the form of this baby right here. Super Mario All-Stars, released on the Super Nintendo in 1993. This is a collection of the 4 8-bit Mario games that came out before, Mario 1, Lost Levels 2, and 3, all completely remade with new graphics and sounds. I'll talk about Mario 2 and 3's version next time, but for now we're gonna look at the first game in Lost Levels. As you can see, the makeover is absurdly good. Like, holy crap, both of these games clean up exceptionally well here. Not sure about this stance, but I think the All-Star version of Mario 1 might be my favorite looking 2D Mario game. I know that sounds strange because later games have way more defined art styles, but something about how Mario 1 looks just clicks with me. Since there wasn't much to work off of in Mario 1 to begin with, they made entirely new assets for everything. The ground now actually looks like the ground instead of the same brick sprite copied over and over again. The backgrounds that used to be solid colors now have a ton of depth and detail defined. This portrait of Bowser in the castle levels is hilarious. Seriously, there's one in each castle. World 5 used to look so sterile and cold, but now it's a full winter wonderland with snow on the ground, trees, and even fences. The Starry Night in World 6 has to be my favorite. It's so simple yet beautiful at the same time. The same applies to the characters as they've gotten a massive makeover. Mario now actually looks like Mario. Funny how that works. Luigi now has different proportions to Mario. He's a bit taller and skinnier. Bowser, I mean, look at him. He's just straight up handsome. And Peach gets her famous pink dress and blonde hair. All the new animations really help in smoothing out the characters' movements. Mario's swimming no longer looks so stilted. Bowser reacts to you when you hit him with fireballs, but my favorite has to be whenever you rescue a Toad in the first 7 castles. For one, they're stuffed in bags. That's just funny. Second, each castle you visit shows more Toads that were kidnapped. What goes from just one Toad at the beginning turns into an army of 7 tiny ones marching out of there. The added cutscene graphics of Peach thanking Mario are pretty nice, although I don't know why Mario's smile goes that low. It looks like he gained a double chin just by getting kissed. As for Luigi, I don't know, I think he's enjoying this a little too much. A lot of the same improvements apply to the Lost Levels, so there's not really much to go over visually. Although instead of World 9, you get 4 new worlds, A through D. It's just more levels to play through. They are challenging, but at that point in the game, most challenge just kind of feels numb to you. It is cool that we have more content available, but I honestly would take World 9 over this. That felt like a fever dream you had to earn. And even though it doesn't add much, I do miss the thank you message you get at the end. But if I'm being real here, you are better off playing the All-Stars versions of these games over the NES ones tenfold. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me, but I swear the control just feels better in this version. It's a little tighter. There's now a dedicated save system across all the games on the collection. I mean, that's worth the price of admission alone. While I do think there is value in sampling the original Super Mario Bros. Just to understand what it was like, I I'd say you're probably better off beating the game on All-Stars. That's how I did it growing up. The nice thing is both versions are available on the Switch's online service, so you do have a lot of options to choose through. And with the added perk of save states and rewinding, you should be able to play these games as comfortably as you'd like. Now, I know this video has gone on long enough, but I did want to bring attention to one more version of the game, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color. This is a weird one for sure, but it's also pretty interesting. This was a later release for the Color in 1999, hey, the same year I was born. We can drink! At first glance, this does just seem to be a portable version of Super Mario Bros., but when you boot it up, there's a shocking amount of new stuff here. Let's go in order. When you select the game, you now have multiple save slots to choose from. That's honestly really convenient. There's now a world map that connects all the levels together, and that's kinda cute. It doesn't serve as great a purpose as later games do with their overworlds, but this is a nice attention to detail. You can now save your progress on any level you want, which for a handheld game is perfect. Mario isn't very long, but you're not going to finish the whole game in a car or bus ride. This gives you a chance to put it down and then pick it back up for later. There's now a leaderboard for how fast you're able to beat the game, which is kind of cool. The extra game modes, in my opinion, are the most interesting aspect. There's a challenge mode that gives you some additional challenges, I really wrote that down, like collecting 5 hidden red coins in a level. There's also finding a hidden Yoshi egg that you can get a clue on how to find thanks to this roulette board. You vs. Boo is probably the most famous addition. It's a race against the Boo Ghost that has you go through remixed levels to get to the end. Each level has a different challenge related to these changing blocks. There are some that turn invisible when you hit a block, others that change on a timer, and some that turn into spikes. The variety is really nice and is personally my favorite aspect about this version. There are little extras like drawings you can unlock as you play, and oh my god, this game has a calendar.
Oh, thank God, I know it's still 1999.
The only thing about this version I can say is objectively worse is the screen size. Since the original resolution of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color is significantly smaller, the game had to be zoomed in so that every sprite wasn't a tiny speck on the screen. The problem there is you can now see significantly less of the screen, so enemies and pits are way more difficult to see coming. I thought this version actually gave you the ability to backtrack since the screen did scroll back if you move to the left, but that's only because the screen is so zoomed in on Mario. You still can't backtrack, which I just really don't understand. This also goes for the All-Stars version, you can't backtrack in that either. I'm guessing it was just something that stayed a part of the core design, because there was no way this was a programming issue in 93 and 99. There's not much of a reason to go back and play this version, but it is a cool piece of Nintendo history. Really, if it weren't for the screen size, I'd say this is a superior version to the NES one, but being able to see less of the game does knock it down a few pegs. Still, I'd say it's worth adding to your collection if you enjoy stuff like this. This is the first Game Boy Color game I ever owned, and it's also in the box with the manual. There's just so many cool details and history. This is a purchase I'm personally happy with. With all that said and done, that's Super Mario Bros. Look, I understand it's a bit difficult to see this game's value nowadays. It has aged, and there are a lot of aspects in this game that are just done better in later entries. But that doesn't take away from what it's done for the medium of video games. Think about it, without this, gaming would never have become as popular an art form as it is now. And for this game to come from just 4 very talented artists and change the landscape of not just video games, but entertainment in general, that's no small feat. I feel if you are in any way interested in retro gaming, you owe it to this game to experience it. Now, which version should you play? I'd say that's up to you. I do think the NES version offers the most authentic experience, but the remakes and All-Stars are objectively better in almost every way. Taking out the better graphics and sound, the save feature alone is enough to play this over the original. Regardless of which version you play, you're in for a good time playing an undeniable classic. Now, Lost Levels, as hilarious as I find its existence, I can't recommend in good conscience. Its origins are interesting, but at the end of the day, you're just playing the same game again, only significantly harder. If you are even the slightest bit curious on playing it, then do so on the NSO or All-Stars versions. Without the save feature, this game is nearly impossible to finish. I find it funny that I spent about as much time talking about this game as it would probably take for people to finish it, but you know, I feel like it deserves to be talked about. Super Mario Bros. Is a really important game, and it deserves the classic status that it has. Man, I gotta say, it's really refreshing talking about Mario at this length. You know, I didn't think anything could beat my Sonic revisits, but I think this might, because this isn't the only Mario game I'm looking at. I'm gonna be looking at the rest of the classic lineup, because, you know, I haven't talked about them at all, and I think it's worth looking at. Why do I feel like I'm forgetting something? Oh!
I found him.